Hello, this is Waldemar with Verify Events Research. This is the second video in this series. My hope with this is to give you a historical background on the interconnections of drugs, human and organ trafficking, as well as banking and geopolitics, in order to provide you with the knowledge to understand more contemporary geopolitical, financial, and pedophilia scandals involving governments and the elites. In this video, we will cover how the Catholic Church became infiltrated with Freemasons and CIA Gladio operatives. Through the 1950s, the Catholic Church and the CIA were engaged in a holy war against communism. Many members of the Italian and Sicilian Mafia joined these CIA-Vatican efforts known as Operations Gladio. Gladio operatives consisted of 622 units of 12 to 15 troops each, trained and armed by the CIA and British intelligence. Thousands of priests and bishops were trained for not only fighting the communist ideology, but were also trained for actual physical combat in case the Cold War became hot. The CIA provided $30 to $50 million annually in black money to support the Catholic-Gladio effort and to fund the Christian Democratic Party of Italy and their push against communism. Former CIA agent Victor Marchetti testified that, quote, in the 1950s and 60s, the CIA provided economic support to many activities promoted by the Catholic Church, from orphanages to missions. Millions of dollars each year were given to a great number of bishops and monsignors. One of them was Cardinal Giovanni Battista Montini, who later became Pope Paul VI, end quote. In order to protect these covert operations, Catholic-Gladio operatives began conducting their meetings inside Masonic lodges. Eventually, these Gladio meetings inside Masonic lodges created the famous Masonic lodge known as Propaganda 2, or P2 for short. Most of its members were military officers and mafia bosses concerned about political ideologies who were required to swear secrecy regarding their existence and operations under the threat of certain death. P2 enjoyed the full approval and support of CIA Director Allen Dulles, a 33rd degree Freemason. Italian dictator Mussolini had outlawed Freemasonry in Italy as a political subversive group. The Catholic Church had always condemned Freemasonry, but during this period, it appears that the Church was covertly and discreetly endorsing participating in Freemasonry as an excuse in their ideological war against communism and in the name of financial gains. As already mentioned, the Mafia also became involved in Freemasonry and joined P2 in an attempt to not just influence Italian politics, but also to overthrow the Italian government in the 60s. Over the next decades, the list of Vatican officials that became part of P2 included an almost endless list of prominent bishops, cardinals, most likely with the knowledge and tacit approval of the popes of that era. Gladio became known in Germany in 1952 when former SS officer Hans Otto blew the whistle on the clandestine activities of the Technical Service Branch of the League of German Youth, TD-BDJ for short. They had amassed a blacklist of hundreds of political dissidents who, quote, were to be assassinated in case of an emergency, end quote. It is well known that the US currently has similar, if not more sophisticated plans to deal with political enemies and activists within the US in case of an emergency. Hans Otto, the SS officer, told the authorities that the TD-BDJ received millions of dollars through Sterling Garwood, a known CIA agent. This unit of Gladio had been organized by Nazi General Reinhard Gehlen, who remained sheltered within Vatican City, as did many other Nazi leaders. Montini, who became Pope Paul VI, had served the OSS, or the U.S. Office of Strategic Services, a precursor to the CIA, in World War II in Operations Vessel, and had received millions of dollars in black funds from the CIA. His relations with the CIA were so close that it is believed his ascendancy to the papacy was rigged by U.S. intelligence services. Licio Gelli, Grand Master of P2 and an atheist, became ordained Knight of the Order of San Sylvester by Pope Paul VI. Using contacts like William Colby, CIA director, Gelli was able to set up escape rat lines for much of the Nazi high command trying to escape to South America, Argentina in particular, and other places on the planet using Vatican-issued passports with new identities. Some of these figures were people like Hans Heffelmann, one of the principal figures in Hitler's euthanasia program, and Adolf Eichmann, SS officer in charge of carrying out the final solution to the Jews. A memo from U.S. intelligence in 1947 reads, quote, "The Vatican justifies its participation by its desire to infiltrate not only European countries but Latin American countries as well, dealing with people of all political beliefs as long as they are anti-communism, and pro-Catholic Church." Gelli also helped the CIA coordinate the operations of the Gladio units through Italy's CFAR, clandestine information services, similar to the CIA. One notorious Gladio operation was the assassination of Enrico Mattei, founder of Italy's oil company Eni. Gelli told a BBC correspondent in an interview that similar attacks were always conducted in accordance with U.S. Army Field Manual 30-31B, the field manual of Gladio units. With the support and approval of the CIA, Gelli was initiated as a Freemason and almost overnight became a 33rd degree Mason and secretary of the P2 Lodge. P2 was receiving massive amounts of cash from black CIA funds, estimated at $10 million per month. The money was used to buy weapons necessary to mount attacks in Italy, Greece, Turkey, and South America. The P2 Lodge included members of the Gambino crime families, among other known mafia names, and such political figures as Richard Nixon, Henry Kissinger, and other leading U.S. political figures of the day. As the leader of P2, Gelli, with the help of the CIA and Italian intelligence, conducted extensive surveillance operations with the sole purpose of conducting blackmailing and coercion. These surveillance documents were stored at the CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, and at the Vatican Bank. Blackmailed individuals were routinely required to join P2 and swear secrecy and loyalty to the cause. Gelli's files eventually included naked photos of John Paul II near a swimming pool. The history of the rise of Michel Sindona to the Vatican Bank is of paramount importance. A bridge between the CIA, the Mafia, and the Vatican, Sindona enjoyed close relationships with the Luciano, Gambino, and other Italian and Sicilian crime families that clearly understood Sindona's position within intelligence organizations and view him as an asset within these crime families. Sindona used black CIA funds and mob money to start Fasco AG Holding Company, which was used to buy Banca Privata Financiera, or BPF for short. BPF became the main mechanism for transferring drug money from the IOR, or Vatican Bank, to be used for Gladio operations. As many of you already know, the CIA has a long history of drug trafficking to partly fund its black operations. The Vatican, on the other hand, is mainly a mechanism for money laundering of drug trafficking funds that look the other way for a generous 15 to 20% commission. Another important figure close to Sindona was Bishop Paul Marcinkus. also known as the Gorilla, who had a background in banking and was known as the Gorilla. Marcinkus became bodyguard of Paul VI and later head of the Vatican Bank thanks to Sindona. Sindona and Marcinkus were fellow Freemasons in defiance of the papal ban on Freemasonry. Sindona's banking enterprise eventually grew into a $22 billion empire, and it all vanished into thin air with lots of questions about the missing money gone unanswered. The CIA and American oligarchs have always been involved in the banking business with the purpose of creating losses in failed ventures for money laundering of black CIA drug money in support of Gladio-like operations for regime change and ideological battles against communism. BPF Bank was not only responsible for the massive loss of depositors' money, but its staff was caught moving money out of depositors' accounts without their awareness in a similar fashion to the MF Global scandal involving John Corzine a few years ago. BPF would move money from their accounts into the Vatican Bank, which then transferred the money into Sindona's personal account in Geneva for a 15% commission. Sindona eventually created a massive international brokerage company called Moneyrex that eventually grew into a $200 billion enterprise, making Sindona the most powerful financial figure in Italy at the time and being able to influence and control Italy's stock market and the currency. By 1967, the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, became aware of Sindona's involvement in shadow banking, mafia, and drug dealing, but these investigations came to a dead end thanks to the intervention of the CIA. By 1969, the Catholic Church was in trouble as the new Italian government was planning to remove the church tax-exempt status, which spelled doom for the Vatican finances with a projected yearly tax bill in excess of $250 million. The Pope requested the assistance of Sindona, who proposed to move assets around Europe using shell companies and also proposed removing the financial backing of the Holy Catholic Church in many private and government ventures, which in turn would send a message to national economies not to mess around with the Vatican. The Holy Father then put Sindona in charge of domestic and international investments, working closely with Marcinkus to manage the billions in Mafia and black CIA funding moving through the Vatican Bank. The Vatican IOR held major interest in companies like Chase Manhattan Bank, Rothschild Bank, General Motors, General Electric, Gulf Oil, Shell Oil, Bethlehem Steel, Alfa Romeo Car Company, Rome Hilton Hotels, Italian construction companies, and many others. The recent endorsement by the Pope of Obama's humanitarian military interventions in the Middle East attests to the involvement of the Vatican in geopolitical affairs due to their vast financial interests in Middle Eastern oil. Finally, by 1969, Sindona had made a new banking friend, Roberto Calvi, a fellow member of the P2 Lodge, who became manager of Banco Ambrosiano and who will be later found hanging from a bridge in a very suspicious suicide. Roberto Calvi became known as the Vatican banker, and his death put the church financial scandals in the spotlight. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode. Waldemar signing out.
On the 18th of June 1982, the lifeless body of a middle-aged man was seen hanging from a section of scaffolding just above the water under Blackfriars Bridge. Calvi had disappeared from Italy on the 10th of June after having been found guilty on a major charge of currency smuggling. The case caused a sensation and was partly responsible for a devaluation of the lira. As chairman of the Banco Ambrosiano, Calvi was known as God's banker when the Vatican became not only a major client, but also one of the bank's most substantial shareholders.
Operation Gladio is an umbrella name for literally hundreds of bombings carried out by Western intelligence agencies and NATO in Italy, Western Europe, the Middle East, Latin America, and Asia. From 1947 until 1981, Italian presidents have gone public admitting Operation Gladio targeted innocent civilians and was to be blamed on leftists and communists. On November 22, 1990, the European Parliament had a resolution condemning the activities of Operation Gladio. The former Italian intelligence chief has come clean concerning Gladio's actions as well. Many other countries have declassified documents concerning Gladio. It is part of the public record that our government and other Western governments targeted trains, buses, schools. Several times operatives zeroed in on school buses, knowing that images of dead children would get the population hopping mad and ready to relinquish their liberties. A particularly bloody bombing at the central station of Bologna, Italy, on the morning of August 2, 1980, which killed 85 people and wounded more than 200, caused some Italian officials to break their silence and begin to expose just a small part of this wicked operation.